This took place when I was in my early 20s. I lived in a small house with a group of 3 other men. We all did not really know each other before moving in together, but we had attended the same college and finished at the same time. So with all of us searching for somewhere to live afterward, it all just kind of worked out. Dividing the rent 4 ways, we were able to afford a fairly small house on the more rural edges of the city. Everything closer was a bit too costly. All went fine for the first 9-ish months, but quite suddenly, 2 of the men decided to move out, leaving just me and KJ. Sadly, KJ was the only one of the 3 that I did not really speak to that much. He was always working, or coming home late, or just not wanting to spend time with the rest of us. So, it kind of stunk that it was the other 2 that moved. It also meant we had to pay double between each of us. This was not something we could keep up, and agreed that at the end of the lease, in 3 months, we would go our separate ways and leave the house. For the first month after the 2 moved, it became really clear how missing KJ was. All my days off, I was often at home, just relaxing all day and night by myself, which was very different from when the other 2 lived here. I did not care too much. If anything, it was great having the place all alone, but I did think it was strange he was out for so long all the time. He only worked part-time in the mornings, but I figured he must have been out with friends all night, every night. However, one night, I happened to stay up a little later than usual. I was sitting in my room, and it was maybe about 1 a.m. when I saw headlights shine through my window, pulling down the gravel driveway. When I heard the front door open, I got up, and for some reason, felt like saying hi, just to keep things from getting too distant and awkward between us. I opened my bedroom door, but was kind of startled as I heard his footsteps begin rushing down the hallway. When I stuck my head out, he jumped, like I had caught him in the act of something. The lights were off in the hallway, so I could not see him too well. But I could see that his eyes were wide and his body was frozen, just outside of his bedroom door. "What is up, KJ? Just seeing how you're doing," I said to break the silence. The way he just stood there in the dark hallway, with his wide-open eyes, and looked at me, was kind of chilling. "I am good." There were another few seconds of silence before I just nodded and stepped back into my room. Well, that definitely did not help make things any less awkward between us. Why was he acting so strange, hurrying to his room and all? I did not want to be nosy, but it kind of had me concerned. After a couple minutes, I opened my door carefully and quietly walked down the hallway. I just wanted to listen for a second as I passed by his room, and nothing more. But when I did, I heard him moving around wildly, like he was opening and closing drawers, frantically. It was so strange that I stopped walking for a second and leaned a bit closer to his door. The chaos continued, making me feel really uneasy until it suddenly went quiet. Everything stopped, like he just froze. As the seconds started to go by, I got more and more uneasy. and wanted to get out of that hallway. But before I could even move, the door suddenly swung open. KJ stood in the doorway with the same wide open eyes as before, staring right at me. In an effort to cover for myself, I said I was just heading to the kitchen and asked if he wanted anything. KJ quietly muttered no, then closed the door on me. It was honestly really creepy and only made me feel more like something was going on with him. I went into the kitchen to follow through with what I said, then went back to my room. He was quiet for the rest of the night. For the next probably 5 or 6 days, I became much more aware of what KJ was doing around the house. I would stay awake until he returned home, feeling too uneasy to rest until I knew he was safely in his bedroom and not doing anything strange. Throughout those days, he stayed in that troubling, almost lifeless condition that I had seen that one evening. His eyes became more restless with each passing day, and he would say only a few words before rushing straight to his bedroom. Then one evening, after he had come home and I was lying in bed attempting to fall asleep, I heard knocking on the other side of my bedroom door. This frightened me because I had not heard his footsteps coming down the hallway toward my room. I got out of bed and opened the door. He had those same tired eyes, but also wore a slight smile. He asked if I owned a flashlight and would assist him in locating it quickly. This seemed unusual to me, since he had never requested help from anyone before, or really wanted to do any activity together. Even though I found it weird and felt exhausted, I thought this might be an opportunity to improve our relationship. So, I took a flashlight and went with him outside to the driveway. He began making casual conversation, asking questions about my job and other topics as we started walking on the gravel while searching around. I noticed almost immediately that his vehicle was parked extremely far down the driveway, positioned all the way at the very end, without any clear reason. Since he had walked all this distance, we would need to do the same to search for his wallet. We walked completely down to where his car sat, and I did not see anything on the ground. But then he began guiding me away from the vehicle. I continued pointing the light around different areas, but I realized there was no logical reason his wallet would be way out here, far from the driveway. I asked him what exactly we were doing. KJ took several seconds to answer, as if he was considering his response, before explaining that he had taken a brief walk out here earlier, so he might have dropped it during that time. I did not really trust what he was saying. He kept attempting to lead me further away from the driveway and deeper into the forest. Each time I suggested we should return to the house, he would try multiple times to persuade me to continue searching. This became very suspicious very quickly, and I felt my anxiety increasing. Here, you can take the flashlight. I am going to return to the house. I need to wake up early for work tomorrow anyway. I said, while trying to give him the flashlight and leave the situation. However, he did not accept it. His obviously fake smile disappeared, and his tired eyes appeared more than just disappointed. He looked furious. He gave no response, but the uncomfortable atmosphere was making me extremely nervous. After several seconds passed, I turned around and began walking quickly away from the forest area. I glanced back multiple times and saw KJ simply standing in that spot, watching me leave. As soon as I reached the house, I began gathering my belongings. I was not sure what that situation had been about, but I did not feel secure around him anymore. I stayed awake the entire night, listening carefully to ensure KJ was not planning anything else, but he never returned to the house that evening. In the morning, I loaded everything important into my vehicle and drove away. Even many years afterward, I never received any communication from KJ or discovered what had been happening with him. His actions were not normal, and I honestly believe he was planning to do something terrible in the forest that night. Second story. Back in 2015, when I was 23, I used Craigslist to look for a roommate to share my apartment. At the time, it was pretty common to use Craigslist for that kind of thing. There really were not many other websites for finding roommates, and it was not as misused as it is now. I put up a listing with some pictures of the apartment and clearly mentioned that I was hoping to find someone around my own age. After just a few days, I got a message from a woman named Hannah. She said she was also 23, still in college, and based on our phone conversations, we seemed to have a lot in common. It looked like we could actually get along well as roommates. So I asked her to come by and see the apartment. When she came, everything went smoothly. Hannah liked the place. We agreed on the rent, and within a week, she had moved in. I did notice that she did not quite look 23. She was taller than me and had a slightly more mature look. I just assumed that was how she naturally looked and did not think much of it. The first few days passed without much interaction. I had my job, and she had both college and work, so we were both busy. On the 5th day after she moved in, I got back from work at around 10 p.m. As soon as I opened the door, I heard quick footsteps down the hallway, followed by the sound of a door slamming shut. I was confused. I put down my bag and walked toward the hallway that led to our bedrooms. Her door was closed, and the light in her room was on. But what caught my attention was that my bedroom door was open. I was sure I had shut it before leaving. That felt off. I was not okay with the idea of someone going through my room. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. After checking the room, everything seemed untouched. Nothing looked moved or searched through. So I decided not to stress over it and just continued with my evening. I got comfortable and started watching TV in my room. I did not hear any noise from Hannah's room for an hour, so I figured she had gone to bed. She had told me before that she liked sleeping early. While I was watching TV, I glanced over at my bedroom door out of habit. That is when I noticed something strange. There was a shadow underneath the door. She was standing right behind it. She was not moving. How long had she been standing there? Hannah? Still no movement. I called out again. Hannah, are you out there? A few quiet seconds went by, and then the shadow slowly shifted, walking away from behind the door and down the hallway. I heard her door slam shut. My heart started racing. What was she doing? I locked my door after that and stayed up a bit later than usual, but I eventually went to sleep. The next morning, I saw Hannah in the kitchen. I politely asked if she needed something last night. She smiled, said everything was fine, and ended the conversation right there. It was strange, definitely, but I did not want to create any tension that early on, so I let it go. She left shortly after, and a few hours later, I headed to work. I got back around the same time as the night before, close to 10:30. The apartment was quiet and dark. All the lights were off, even in her room. So I figured she had already gone to sleep. I walked into my bedroom quietly and shut the door behind me, trying not to wake her. After a short FaceTime call with one of my friends, I got in the shower to relax and get ready for bed. While I was showering, I thought I heard something outside my room. I even lowered the water pressure for a moment to listen, but when I heard nothing else, I went back to showering. Once I finished and stepped out, I noticed that the hallway door was open. I quickly got dressed and stepped into the hallway. All the lights were still off, and there was no sound coming from Hannah's room. At that point, I was seriously uneasy. I closed my door again and locked it. What was strange was that I felt pretty sure I had locked it earlier without thinking, right after coming home and going into my room. Now, I just assumed I had forgotten. But I was definitely not going to forget again. Still, why would she open my door in the first place? Or did she even open it? The apartment was completely still and silent, like she had never left her room and was asleep the whole time. What was going on? I stayed awake for another hour, trying to watch TV to calm myself down, but I was still really on edge. I barely knew Hannah, so I had no idea what this was all about or how to deal with it. I kept trying to talk myself out of worrying. I kept telling myself it was probably something harmless. Maybe she tried to talk to me, saw I was in the shower, and left. But even if that were true, it still did not explain everything else that had happened. After about an hour, I knew I had to sleep. I turned everything off, got into bed, and shut my eyes. It felt like the moment I closed my eyes, I opened them again. I had clearly fallen asleep, but only for a little while. I was not sure what had woken me up. I rolled over and looked around. The room was completely dark, and the whole apartment was silent. I could not even hear anything from the neighbors, just the occasional creaking of the old building. But in the darkness, I noticed that my bedroom door was slightly open. Just a few inches, maybe. Still, it terrified me. I was certain I had locked it, and even worse, I had not heard it open. "Hannah," I said softly, The silence around me felt heavier with every second, making me more uneasy. I sat up, staring at the crack in the doorway. It felt like someone was watching me through it. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I looked around the room again. It's when I saw her. She was standing in the corner near my wardrobe. She said nothing, did not move, just stood there, facing me in the dark. My heart started racing, beating faster with each second. Then she took a step toward me. Even in the darkness, I could see enough of her face. Her expression was blank, lifeless, like she was staring straight through me. She took another step, and then suddenly ran across the room and out into the hallway. A second later, I heard her door slam shut. I did not even think. I grabbed my phone and my car keys and ran out of the apartment. She had not actually done anything to me, but I was completely terrified. I did not feel safe waiting outside either. I was afraid she might come running out after me. I drove to a nearby neighborhood and parked, then called the police. I just wanted to understand what was going on and to feel safe with officers nearby. About 15 minutes later, the police arrived at the apartment. By that time, Hannah was gone. She had taken most of her things and disappeared. When we tried to reach her and find out who she really was, we discovered that all the information she had given me was fake. Even her name was not real. Her phone number was to a prepaid burner. No name, no identity linked to it. Like I said, this happened in 2015. Now, nearly 10 years later, I have never heard from her again, which makes me believe she may have had some truly disturbing plans. If I had stayed in that apartment with her any longer, who knows what could have happened? There are so many questions and barely any real answers. Not long after that, I moved to a different place, always on edge, worried she might show up when I least expect it. Third story. For 2 years, I shared a small house near campus with my college roommate Jason. We attended the same university. Even though we had been roommates at college for 1 year before this, we were not particularly close friends or anything like that. We both had similar plans after graduation, so living together made practical sense at the time. The first year went really smoothly. We became much closer and liked living together enough to sign the lease for another year. This took place in June, 2 months after we had renewed our rental agreement. After a typical late evening at work, I came home and spoke with Jason for some time. Then we both decided to end the night and headed to bed. But during the middle of the night, I woke up to the wooden floor making creaking sounds in the hallway. The sounds were moving slowly, heading toward the main section of the house. I turned over and checked the clock. Seeing it was 3 o'clock in the morning, I assumed Jason was just getting some water or something similar. I did not know for certain at that moment, and I did not really care either. So I just returned to sleep in the morning. I needed to go to work early, so I was somewhat rushing to get out the door. But Jason opened his bedroom door, looking exhausted, and asked me something I was not prepared for. He asked what I was doing walking around the house during the middle of the night. I was shocked right away. I told him I was not walking around, but had thought I heard him moving through the house. The conversation basically stopped there though, with both of us puzzled about what we had both heard, because I needed to leave for work. To be honest, I thought our floors or walls must have just been making noise from the wind hitting the house or something similar, if it really was not Jason making those sounds. When I returned home, Jason was at his job, so I spent most of the evening just relaxing in my bedroom. Eventually, around the same time as the previous night, I went to bed. But then once again, I woke up around the same time to the floorboards making that identical creaking noise. This time, rather than immediately returning to sleep, I tried to listen more closely. It sounded exactly like someone slowly moving through the hallway and into the living room. Once the sounds reached the other side of the house, I could not hear anything for about 30 seconds, and I decided to get up and investigate. I opened my bedroom door and walked down to the living room, but Jason was not in there. As far as I could determine, there was nothing present that could explain what I had heard. I returned to my bedroom and went to sleep. What I found so odd about it was that the sound traveled through the house in a pattern. If it was just the home making settling noises, why did it slowly move across the house like that? I brought it up to Jason in the morning, and neither of us could think of any explanations. Jason was off work this day, but at 2 o'clock, I had to go to my job. I did not make it back to the house until nearly 11 o'clock. When I did arrive and walked down the hallway to my bedroom, I felt confused to see Jason awake, since I spotted him from the corner of my vision, sitting on his bed in his bedroom as I walked past his doorway. I shouted, "What's happening?" as I headed to my bedroom, but Jason did not answer. I found it somewhat strange, but perhaps he simply did not notice me, so I went into my bedroom. I removed my work clothes and changed into casual clothing. I exited my bedroom to head to the kitchen and grab some food, but I saw Jason's light was turned off in his bedroom now when I walked past. I glanced in just to check if he was okay. He was still seated on his bed in the corner, now just in darkness, so I could hardly make him out. "Hey, what's going on, Jason? Are you fine?" I shouted. After several seconds of him not answering, I just walked away from the doorway and headed to the kitchen. This was clearly strange, but I did not know what else I could do. Obviously, I was not going to just walk into his bedroom for no good reason, just so he would answer me. But it did appear really unusual he did not at least just say hello or something. I was in the kitchen for about 15 minutes, then walked back to my bedroom. Jason's door was shut when I walked past. For an entire hour, I remained in my bedroom. But then I heard that noise, the floorboards making sounds right in the hallway. I glanced over, and suddenly something shifted under the door. I listened to the sounds continue, but with my recent few interactions with Jason being strange, I decided I would just message him this time to ask if it was him moving around. I waited several minutes. Then I finally received a response. Jason sent me a question mark, then added, "What do you mean? I'm not home right now." My face turned white, and my eyes darted over to the door. I got up and rushed into the hallway. No one was there, but the door to Jason's bedroom was now open again. I quietly stood there and listened, but did not hear anything. I walked over and looked through the doorway. Standing in the middle of the completely black room was an unknown person. Even in the darkness, now that he was closer and standing up facing me, I could see he was taller and had a thick beard. Two clear features different from Jason that I could not see before. Without any more delay, I ran out of the house. I called the police right away, standing on the other side of the street. When they arrived, whoever that person was gone. Strangely, there were no signs of how he entered or left the house from, aside from a window that was partially unlocked, but it did not seem to have been opened recently. What is really disturbing is knowing that he was likely the cause of the sounds from floorboards for the last several days in the middle of the night, meaning he was inside, moving around the house while we were sleeping. Even more scary is trying to figure out why he was in Jason's bedroom, just sitting on his bed and seemingly waiting for something. Interestingly, in the last few days, that was the one day that Jason had off and that I worked, meaning Jason would be alone pretty much all evening. This makes me think the unknown person somehow knew this and was waiting to catch Jason off guard while he was alone. This would explain why the person was in Jason's bedroom waiting, and why he did not do anything to me. But fortunately, Jason happened to go hang out with a friend for most of the night. Whatever the case, we probably will not ever know the person's true intentions unless it is too late.